Greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey Aurora and from me. First of all, I must thank that lovely person who gave me those flowers. On Sunday, we had an afternoon at Castle Goring avec moi, and it was absolutely sold out. Oh, not Meghan Markle sold out, properly sold out. And the weather, it has to be said, was not the greatest. So we opened the doors early, and instead of everybody having the use of the grounds of the castle, they had access to the castle and were able to mill around in the staterooms and downstairs. And I was given one or two nice presses. My hips are going to be very appreciative. And so, those wonderful flowers as well. So now, without further ado, I am going to plunge in with what Conservative Kim says. Because, as you know, an awful lot has been happening, and it's created a lot of controversy, a lot of talk, and a lot of, shall we say, inspection, with trying to unravel what's really going on and where the truth lies. Anything to do with the Sussexes is always going to be really a scramble to discover where the truth lies, especially now that they have a very aggressive PR team that actually is somewhat competent. Sorry, rather more so than Sunshine Sachs was. So, just as Harry and Meghan weren't expecting Taylor Swift's engagement announcement knocking them off the headlines. That was never, wasn't it? One tail left time. Here in America, Charlie Kirk is dominating headlines. Harry and Meghan, who? Well, one could say the universe is smiling in the right direction. I actually don't think the universe cares one way or the other about Harry and Meghan, to be dead blunt. But I suppose they might think that the universe cares very greatly about them and is spiting them. For all we know, Meghan might have decided in much the same way that Taylor Swift has ganged up against her. So has Charlie Kirk's killer. But I actually, in fairness, don't think so. I think it's wildly inappropriate that anything would be swamping Charlie Kirk's murder at this stage. Because the fact of the matter, as Camilla Long said in the Sunday Times this week, and Camilla Long is pretty centrist and sometimes leftist, she made the point that 20 years ago, everything that Charlie Kirk represented would have been very much within the norm in the Judeo-Christian culture. Charlie Kirk was not racist. He was not anti-anything. He liked argument and argued very well, but he was a devout Christian who believed in Christ's message, who believed that we are all sinners, who believed that freedom of speech counted, and that you didn't have to agree with him. He would argue a case very patiently, very decisively, And it has to be said very brilliantly, in a way that I wouldn't have been able to. Because I have to tell you, I wouldn't have the patience, number one. And number two, I would just get annoyed. But he never did. He stuck to the facts and the issues at hand, and whether you agreed with him was beside the point. He was a brilliant debater. And it has to be said that not only has Camilla Long come out in favor of the fact that people should be outraged at his demise, but so has one of the heads of the Oxford University Debating Society, who actually more or less said that Charlie Kirk was a brilliant arguer and that he condemned the chap with a very interesting name who debated him quite recently in very inappropriate attire, and was actually almost jubilant that somebody had actually killed Charlie Kirk. So no, I think Charlie Kirk's murder is going to possibly be a sea change in the way people view things, because an awful lot of decent people of all political spectra have come out condemning what has been done. I mean, people should not have to pay with their lives because we don't like what they're saying. It's just the mark of a very decadent society when people approve of such conduct. And maybe the universe is finally recalibrating and actually deciding that, well, Meghan and Harry need to be kept in their proper place. Sophie Furtado says, but who cares if the evil couple set the meeting? Why would Charles accept? The fact you think Charles was worried how it would look if he refused the meeting is astounding, because Charles and Prince William have the support of the world behind them. The world sees those two freeloaders for what they really are, traitors, big block capitals. And sorry, Lady Campbell, can you explain how Harry could privately fly to Ukraine? Who is he representing? Not the royal family, not the Starmer government. So, who is he doing this for? I really don't understand. He's doing it for himself. He's doing this to re-establish his links with the military. He is doing this to ratify his importance. And two separate, very influential people have got in touch with me to point out that when Harry said that he needed Meghan and the government's permission, he doesn't need the British government's permission. He needed the permission of the Ukrainian government. He did not need the permission of the British government. Yes, he hitched his wagon to Yvette Cooper's train and he trundled along down the tracks with her, catching lifts, etc. But the fact of the matter is, it is evidently inaccurate for Harry to have said that he needed the permission of the British government. He didn't. That is a very important point. oh, he's got the collusion of the British government, because obviously he cadged a lift with them. So definitely there is collusion. But did he need permission? Absolutely not. No. Many people don't like the fact that Charles actually met with Harry. And I understand why they don't like the fact that Charles met with Harry. But Charles has his own issues to contend with. Charles is ill. Charles could live another 5 years. He could be dead in another 5 weeks. He must know that. And who can begrudge him wanting to see his son? And he doesn't, I think, yes, the ideal situation, if you were going to be, quite frankly, very punitive and also very callous, some people would say very responsible, would have been to not met with Harry in the circumstances, I should say under the circumstances, and in the situation that they met. Charles could have easily said to Harry, young man, because remember, Harry's a young man. He's over 40. That's very young nowadays. In fact, maybe Mickey and Aurora will run and get a soother and we can send it to Harry. But Charles could have easily said to him, you want a rapprochement? Come and meet with me in Scotland. Nobody needs to know that you have come. That would have been the mark of a proper reconciliation. The fact that there was no such meeting and no such intention on either side to have a meeting of that nature tells you that the whole thing is for show. It's for show in terms of Meghan and Harry's self-importance and commercial desirability, but it's also for Charles to be able to take the sting out of the constant media nonsense about olive branches, reconciliations, rapprochement. And yes, it's wonderful that you have made the point, Sophie Furtado, that the world pretty much is behind Charles and William where Harry and Meghan are concerned. So I hope that has answered the question. I mean, the whole issue is been quite something, but it's going to die a death in the next few days because of the Trump visit, if nothing else. Fingers crossed it will die a death. Rita Newbury says, Harry said on TV he has no regrets and his conscience is clear. He's lying again. I hope he and she get their comeuppance. Well, actually, Rita Newbury, I don't think he was lying. I think he was speaking the truth. I think he does feel he has no regrets. He feels he needed to make the point that he and Meghan are in the right and that the royal family has been in the wrong, and that he has no regrets, and that his conscience is clear. It's very easy to have a clear conscience when you don't really have an operational conscience. If he had an operational conscience, he wouldn't be saying what he's just said. It shows a lack of insight. It shows a lack of appreciation of the reality. And it shows he is still playing the "I'm so alright, always" game, while he and Meghan are playing the "Oh, well, I'm just fabulous, I'm authentic, I'm just perfect" game. Well, nobody's buying it, so let them continue doing that. But I don't think he's lying, and I think that this visit has actually fed a lot of fodder that Harry and Meghan can now use to fox people. And I see an awful lot of supposedly intelligent people being foxed at the moment. But you hope they're going to get their comeuppance. Sorry, they're getting it on a daily basis, in case you haven't noticed. No matter their efforts, everything amounts to naught at the end of the day. But is he lying again? No, I think he's speaking the truth. And he's too dumb to realize he should be faking it. Marie Dorn says, one of your commentators wisely said, Harry will blab, and he did, in an interview with The Guardian that appeared a few hours after your video. The man has zero impulse control. Clearly, the meeting with the king didn't go as he had hoped. He can neither control nor manage his anger. Charles probably explained to him what he had to do to even consider entering the family circle again. For example, a public apology to the Queen, to William and Catherine, and even to the people. Or maybe he told him he had to settle things with Thomas Markle and finally meet him in person. Something was said or happened that Harry didn't like, and so he shared his views with The Guardian, self-righteous and accusatory as always. Harry, the eternal victim. In my opinion, lifelong exile is the only viable option. Lifelong exile is the actual option that's taking place as we see it. I actually understand why Charles agreed to that meeting. I wouldn't have agreed to it. Not there and not under the conditions, and not knowing that Harry would indeed open his mouth and blab. And the fact is, Harry has a lot to be dissatisfied over because he was kept waiting. He was granted really staff access, not family access. So, to put it another way, he was treated in a low grade as opposed to a high grade way from the word go. He will also have known that by not being given a blue light car, that was a message as well. Then he arrives and they are not alone. They're never alone. And I would be very surprised having been in similar situations myself with members of my family who we were on the major outs with each other. Nothing of any consequence is ever discussed. You can just about manage discussing the weather, and you can just about manage spitting out a hello. And the rest of the time, it's non-conversations about nothing, not even platitudes being bandied about, non-conversations. Was he upset? Of course he was upset, because he has been trying to set things up in such a way that he would be able to wangle his way back in, or at least appear to do so. Well, he knew that the appearance would fail in sophisticated quarters, and even though it has not failed entirely, he knows that it's failed sufficiently that it's not really a great success. And also, it's been for naught, because he's not really playing to the British gallery. He is playing to the American gallery. And my goodness, everybody's looking in the opposite direction. They're looking at the Charlie Kirk problems and the issues that Charlie Kirk's death have imposed upon Americans of all different colours, complexions, political and otherwise. So, is his nose out of joint? My understanding is very much so. Oh, this is one of those really bizarre things. Let me see if okay. I'm not going to mention the bizarre thing. I'll use N. N says, E-N. Harry is riding high and thinks he is invincible with the British government's backing. He told people in the Ukraine that he doesn't regret anything in spare, that he was just correcting what was already out there. That's after his visit to his father. Harry has just shown he doesn't care about an actual relationship with his father. He got what he wanted by being allowed to meet him, and he has set up an opposition royal court. Not Charles' fault. He was between a rock and a hard place. Human nature at its worst. And love it. Harry has been posing as if he's riding high. But Harry's mask has been slipping. So, is he riding high, or is he simply pretending to ride high? I think he's tried his cheapy-chappy bit. He's had all sorts of people who shilly-shally and waffle like Tina Brown, who can't decide at this point whether she should be pro or anti. So 1 minute she's pro, the next she's anti. And that's fine. She's entitled to her opinion, even though one doesn't agree with it. And she and people of her ilk will lead you to believe that Harry is riding high, and he certainly posed as if he was riding high. But was he riding high? Not so sure. Let me put it that way. And also, does he have the government's backing? Well, he and this government have very similar political aspirations and objectives. one of which is to deny President Trump any success that he might be able to achieve. It's beyond belief, but that's their objective. Let's see how this week plays out with the Trump visit. Let's see, because so much that is conflicting is going on at the moment that it behooves us to simply recognize what's really going on and wait for the chips to fall where they may. And yes, Harry has to be right. And Harry's saying that he was simply correcting some of the errors and erroneous observations and preconceptions that were out there, like his stepmother was manipulating and throwing him and William to the wolves so that she would become queen. Oh, notice he hasn't taken that one back. Notice he hasn't taken anything back about Charles and Catherine being racist. Notice that. He's taken back the Oprah claim that the family was racist, even though he and Meghan both made it. But the subsequent racist claims, he's not taken that back either. It's painful to have to admit it, but it is obvious that Harry doesn't care about his father. And it is obvious that his father knows that Harry doesn't care about him. This will be a great sadness to a man who loved his son and got along with him better than he got along with his firstborn son. And yes, you're right. Human nature at its worst. And Charles is between a rock and a hard place, as any parent with a child who is as disturbed and destructive as Harry will know. Primrose Patch says, I can't believe King Charles didn't play a part in Harry's Ukraine visit, Lady C. The king himself visited the Imperial Blast Centre in February, and I also cannot believe the government would not have sought the king's advice and permission for the visit. Also, I see absolutely no sense unless the king's trying to shoehorn his younger son back in to agree to a public meeting with Harry, who is clearly the party who would benefit most from it. It's allowed Harry to stick his foot in the door, and it's now all going from bad to worse. The king's surrounded by advisors who would have thought that this was a good idea, unless to alert the public to a possible half-in, half-out, ditto the private leaked meeting on the balcony, and the huge push by the royal rota to continuously and so collectively attack Prince William and his lovely family for weeks, now shouting reconciliation at every turn. As a person who has her ear to the ground, bongo, drongo, drums, etc., can you please reassure the many of us who are angry and upset and given the circumstances are questioning whether this is all purely originating from California and their British PR team, or perhaps somewhere much closer to home. I know an awful lot of the media are making out that there are problems between Charles and William. Tina Brown is but one of many, and that Charles doesn't approve of William's family-centric attitude, and that Charles wants William to do more public engagements, and therefore he and his people are going to be briefing against William and briefing for Harry, so that they are going to be able to put pressure on William. Well, if you believe that, my dear, you will believe anything. I'm here to tell you, I know from my experience over the Charles and Diana business that Charles was adamant that no one should speak to the press or any of the authors. Of course, it was too late to say that where I was concerned, because the horse had neighed in my direction. But it doesn't alter the fact that Charles said, don't, he told Nick Soames, as well, I am told, you not to say anything publicly. And Nick Soames, Sir Nicholas Soames, Winston Churchill's son, completely ignored him. He was one of the people who ignored him, because people took the view that Charles was going to be destroyed by Diana unless the public were informed as to really what the dynamics were between the, at that time, estranged couple. There is no benefit to Charles to be leaking to the press against William. There's no benefit to Charles, and there's no benefit to William. There's a huge benefit to Harry and Meghan to have that story put out. And then there's a huge benefit to the media for them to say that this is what is happening. Now, I am not saying that there are not pro-Charles people who might speak to the press, but I am pretty damn sure that it's not Charles who is briefing them to brief the press. I'm pretty sure about that. And on that note, I'll say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know what you would like us to be discussing. Okay? And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and Godspeed. Bye-bye.